Hey guys, welcome back to another video of Frost Insight. This is another episode of the series What if Ash actually evolved his Pokemon? What if he realized if he want to actually win league and become a champion of this whole world, he has to evolve his fucking Pokemon who does not want to. And not only he evolve his Pokemon who does not want or he stops watching them or he stops training them, but he also goes on catching Pokemons who are actually non-anime, those who are known in his anime teams. And not only that, but he goes on trying once more Kanto gyms, so they are going to be much more fun with more companions, more Pokemons, and much more exciting adventures. So, without any more delay, let's begin today's episode.
Flashback Kanto Region 5.5 years ago. A 13-year-old Anthony Jenny walks through a forest. It's been 9 months since my father died and the ache is still fresh. My family is probably still looking for me, but I just wish they'd stop. There's no point, nothing they can do will help, Anthony says to himself in his thoughts. There it is, Anthony says out loud, and the thing of which he sees a large wall, which has the Pokeball symbol on it. The battle arena, Anthony says, revealing the reason he was going through the forest, and goes to the entrance and knocks on it. The door then opens and inside the wall is a dojo, and he sees several people wearing blue karate robes wearing yellow belts, and in the center is a woman wearing a black robe with red stripes on it, white belt and blonde hair. Are you the arena tycoon Greta? Anthony asks, walking into the walls of the battle arena. Yes, I am. Who are you? Greta asks. Does it matter who I am? Anthony asks. It does actually if you want to learn here, Greta responds. Why do you think I wish to learn from your dojo? Anthony asks. Why else would you be here? Greta asks, and Anthony realizes he can't fool Greta. My name is Anthony. I wish to learn martial arts here, Anthony says, and Greta smiles. End flashback Commerce City present time. The sun begins to rise over Commerce City at around 8 o'clock in the morning, and Bianca wakes up in her sleeping clothes, which are a long-sleeved light blue shirt and purple pajama bottoms, and Bianca then yawns a bit, then stretches her arms a bit, and then gets out of her bed in the Pokemon Center. She then goes over to Ash's bed to see it's been made and him and Pikachu aren't in it. Where are Ash and Pikachu? Bianca asks, and she looks out the window to see Ash, Pikachu and Ash's Kabuto, who Ash obtained in Cerulean City several weeks ago. Remember back to chapter 14 of the story, outside apparently training for Ash's rematch with the Commerce City's arrogant gym leader Leaf, who he lost to yesterday. Alright, let's see what you can do. Kabuto, use Scratch. Ash says, and the shellfish Pokemon's claw glows white and runs at one of the trees and begins to scratch it up. Kabuto Buto. Kabuto says as it scratches up the bark on the tree with Scratch. Ash, what are you doing? Bianca asks, and Ash and Pikachu turns around to see Bianca outside of the Pokemon Center behind them. She's dressed in her daytime clothes now. I'm training with my Kabuto. I got it revived from a fossil a few weeks ago actually, Ash explains to Bianca, revealing what he is doing with the shellfish Pokemon, Kabuto. I've never seen that Pokemon before, Bianca says, but if you remember Pokemon Heroes, she has met Kabuto's evolved form. Here, take a look. Ash says and hands Bianca his Pokédex, and Bianca, while not very familiar with how to work the device, manages to find the button to activate it and scans Ash's Kabuto with it. Kabuto, the shellfish Pokemon. It is thought to have inhabited beaches 300 million years ago. It is protected by a stiff shell. So how much have you used Kabuto since you got it revived? Bianca asks. I haven't used it in a battle at all actually yet, Ash says. So does that mean you're not gonna use him against Leaf? Bianca asks. Defiantly not. Kabuto needs more training before I can use him in a gym battle, Ash says, which is a pretty smart thing because Kabuto in a game would probably be at level 20 right now. So what Pokemon are you gonna use against Leaf? Bianca asks, and inside of the Pokémon Center, Nurse Joy, who had just gotten up, hears Bianca's words. Don't ask me how she can hear them from inside the center, and her eyes instantly widen and she runs right out of the Pokémon Center and over to Ash and Bianca, who both take notice to her presence, and Joy grabs Ash by the shoulders and shakes him around. You're going to challenge Leaf to a rematch, Joy says in a loud tone of voice, so loud that the entire city can probably hear her voice, and releases her grip on Ash and stares at him. Yeah, Ash says, and Nurse Joy groans. I told you not to challenge her in the first place, and look what happened. Can't you listen to good advice when it's given to you? Joy asks once again in a loud tone of voice. Look, Nurse Jenny. No, that's not right. Jill, no. Jamie, no. Jane, wait, no, that's not right either. Wait, Joy. Listen, Ash is not backing down from battling and beating that cocky girl Leaf. Bianca says, since she doesn't like Leaf in the slightest, as shown in Ash's first battle with the arrogant Commerce City gym leader. You listen. Leaf hasn't lost one battle against any trainer who challenged her. Trust me, you should just go to another gym somewhere else, at least then you'd have a chance. Joy says, well, you listen. Ash isn't backing down from this. Someone has to stand up and beat Leaf into the ground, and before she reaches 100 victories. Bianca says, you can tell she is going to be supportive of Ash throughout the story. Bianca's right. No way am I backing down from this. Ash says, his spirit more pumped than ever thanks to Bianca's words. Nurse Joy frowns from what Bianca and Ash had just said to her and stomps her foot down on the ground in anger. Fine. But don't you expect me to treat your Pokemon's injuries again after Leaf defeats you again. Joy yells and then slams her foot down on the ground in anger again and storms off back into the Pokemon Center. Hey, Ash, what was all that about? May asks, yawning a bit, having just woken up just a few minutes ago. Yeah, why was Nurse Joy yelling at you? Dawn asks, having heard Joy yelling at Ash, but of course half of the city could probably hear her with a voice that loud. Dawn. Bianca mentioned I'm going to have a rematch with Leaf and she flipped out. Ash says, recounting what just happened. She also said she won't heal Ash's Pokemon again if Leaf beats him in the rematch, but she sounded like she really thought he's gonna lose. Bianca says, adding more to the conversation they are having. I need to start training hard if I'm gonna beat Leaf, guys. Ash says. Yan, you have to beat her before she fights her 100th challenger. Bianca says. Why? Dawn asks. Because Dawn. Then Leaf will be completely humiliated in front of the city. Bianca says, revealing her reason why she thinks Ash should challenge Leaf to a rematch battle when she reaches up to 100 challengers. When does the gym open anyway? May asks. Around 10, so that means we've got 2 hours to train. Max says, having looked up the time when the gym opens. Then let's get started. In a minute. Ash says, and then walks into the Pokemon Center. Ash, what are you doing? Bianca asks. I need to call someone, Ash says, and goes inside the Pokemon Center. A few moments later, after calling whomever it is he did, Ash comes out of the Pokemon Center. So whom did you call anyway, Ash? Bianca asks. I called up for a Pokemon that's in training, Ash says, revealing why he was calling someone in the Pokemon Center. Who? May asks, wondering which Pokemon Ash has called for. A Pokemon who might be able to beat Leaf. Ash says. Wait, what about Zekrom? Dawn asks, remembering Ash has recently captured the legendary Deep Dark Pokemon of Unova. I'm only going to use Zekrom as a reserve Pokemon, like a last resort kind of thing. Plus I want to train with some of my other Pokemon. Ash explains, which seems like a good idea because you don't want the rest of your Pokemon to be low-leveled. Bianca then begins to get impatient and slams her foot on the ground. Come on, guys. We have to start training right now if you're gonna beat Leaf, Ash. Bianca says, showing she wants Ash to defeat Leaf pretty badly, but to be honest, who could really blame her? A few moments later, Dawn is on one side of the outside battlefield with her Togekiss, who stands gracefully as always, and on Ash's side of the battlefield is Ash with his newly captured Zorua, which he captured while him and the gang were in Castelia City while in the Unova region. Alright. Togekiss use Aura Sphere. Dawn says, and Togekiss puts both of her wings together and fires multiple light blue balls of energy from the front of her mouth at Zorua. Alright. Zorua dodge it. Ash says, and the tricky fox Pokemon dodges the Aura Sphere attack and then, without Ash even so much as giving it a command, uses its illusion ability and turns into a Togekiss itself and chuckles. What was that? Bianca asks, not knowing what Zorua just did, and Bianca pulls out Ash's Pokédex, which Ash has allowed her to borrow to learn more about Zorua's special ability. Illusion is a special ability which allows the user to change its shape into a human or Pokemon. It can also create illusions, which can even fool cameras. The only known Pokemon to be able to use this ability is Zorua and its evolved form Zoroark. Okay. Zorua use night days. Ash says, and Zorua reverts back to its original form and its eyes glow light blue and it raises its front two paws into the air and its body then becomes surrounded in a crimson aura, and then Zorua brings its paws down to the ground and a pink and crimson force field of energy appears around Zorua's body and expands outwards throughout the whole battlefield. Togekiss dodge it. Dawn says, and the Jubilee Pokemon flies up into the air dodging Zorua's Night Days attack. Now use Aura Sphere. Dawn says, and Togekiss, who is in the air, puts both of her wings together and then fires a light blue sphere of energy, sending it right at Zorua. Zorua. Quick. Dodge it. Ash says, and Zorua jumps out of the way before the Aura Sphere can make contact with it. Good. Now jump up and use Scratch. Ash says, and Zorua jumps in the air and the crimson part of one of Zorua's paws glows light blue and hits Togekiss with it and then jumps back down to the ground. Togekiss use Air Slash. Dawn says, and Togekiss lifts up one wing and it glows light blue and then swings it, releasing multiple light blue glowing saw disc-like energy blades from its wings, sending straight at Zorua. Zorua. Quick. Dodge him. Ash says, and Zorua begins to dodge the Air Slash attacks, which are being fired at it by Dawn's Togekiss, but the last one manages to hit Zorua, which flips the tricky fox Pokemon right off the battlefield. Zorua then gets up looking even more determined to win. Zorua use Shadow Ball. Ash says, and then Zorua at its trainer's command opens up its mouth and forms a sphere of black and purple energy with black static around it and fires it right at Togekiss. Togekiss use Protect. Dawn says, and Togekiss folds up both of her wings and a turquoise energy shield forms around her body, and Zorua's Shadow Ball attack hits the shield and does nothing, and Zorua frowns at this and its eyes glow blue and Togekiss becomes outlined in light blue briefly and Zorua smiles a bit evilly. Hey. What did Zorua just do? Bianca asks. Zorua use Shadow Ball again. Ash says, and Zorua once again opens up its mouth and forms a sphere of black and purple energy with black static around it and fires it right at Togekiss. Togekiss. Quick. Use Protect again. Dawn says, and Togekiss prepares to use Protect again, but surprisingly nothing happens at all and Zorua's Shadow Ball attack strikes Togekiss and she falls right down onto the ground below, and Togekiss gets up but it seems to be getting tired. Oh, I get it. Zorua used Disable. Max says, realizing what move Zorua used on Togekiss. Disable. Bianca asks and then pulls out Ash's Pokédex to check what the move is which Zorua just used. Disable is a normal type move which will stop the user's opponent from using the same move they used again. Whoa. I didn't know Zorua knew that. Ash says, astonished by the move that Zorua just used. It can be a very useful move most of the time. Alright, let's see what else Zorua can do. Togekiss use Sky Attack. Dawn says, and Togekiss' body becomes surrounded by a pure white aura and she flies right towards Zorua, and as she does, a white trail of energy is left behind her. Zorua, using its illusion ability, transforms into a Togekiss itself and flies up into the air just when Dawn's Togekiss comes down and crashes right into the ground where Zorua was, and Zorua switches back to its own form and fires a Shadow Ball attack where Togekiss is. Togekiss. Dawn says, and the dust clears around Togekiss and it shows the Jubilee Pokémon has fainted with swirls in her eyes. Zorua. That was great. Ash says, impressed by Zorua's battle with Dawn's Togekiss, and Dawn then recalls the fainted Jubilee Pokémon back to her Pokeball. Thanks Togekiss, you really helped Zorua train, Dawn says. Soon the group then goes into the Pokémon Center to get Togekiss healed up, and the Nurse Joy inside turns to see them and frowns. You're still going to challenge Leaf, aren't you? Joy asks in a frustrated tone of voice. I'm not backing down from this. Someone has to beat her and it's gonna be me. Ash says, determined to battle Leaf and defeat her, which needs to happen. Could you heal up my Togekiss, Nurse Joy? Me and Ash were training for his rematch. Dawn asks, and Nurse Joy, frowning, takes Togekiss Pokeball and walks off to have the Jubilee Pokemon health fully restored. So who are you going to use this time? May asks. I'm thinking of using Zorua. Ash says, that might be a good idea. Zorua's ability illusion might confuse Leaf's Pokémon. Max says, having studied the move a bit since he heard about it. Hey, I got an idea. Why not use Latias? Dawn asks, remembering Ash captured the Eon Pokémon 2 days ago in Alto Mare. That won't happen, Dawn. Bianca says. What? Why not? Dawn asks. Latias doesn't really like to fight very much. She's a pacifist. Bianca explains, revealing why Latias is not a good choice to use in a Pokémon battle. Oh, I get it, Dawn says. Actually, no, that I think about it. I know who I'm gonna use besides Zorua. Ash says, and a roar can be heard outside in the distance and the group hears it. Where'd that come from? Bianca asks, and Ash smiles. Outside. It's the Pokémon I called for. Ash says, and the group goes outside to see what's out there, and they look up in the air to see that the Pokémon Ash called for is his Charizard. Hey, it's your Charizard. May says, recognizing the flame Pokémon, and Bianca, astonished by this, pulls out Ash's Pokédex to check for data on Charizard. Charizard, the flame Pokémon. Charizard flies around the sky in search of powerful opponents. It breathes fire of such great heat that it melts anything, even boulders. Its wings can carry it close to an altitude of 4,600 feet. Charizard then flies onto the ground and roars once again. Charizard. Great to see you, buddy. Ash says, since he hasn't seen Charizard since his battle with the Pyramid King Brandon over 4 years ago, you'd think he'd visit him since he's taken a year off from traveling. Why didn't Professor Oak just send him over in a Pokeball instead of having him fly here? Bianca asks. Charizard doesn't stay at Professor Oak's lab, Bianca. He stays in the Johto region in a place called Cherisific Valley. It's a place where Charizard train and get stronger, Ash explains. So how long has Charizard been there for? Dawn asks. About 5 years. He's learned a lot of new attacks there, and he might be just the Pokémon who can beat Leafs, Ash explains, and suddenly the group sees a trainer run into the Pokémon Center. Looks like Leaf just fought her 99th trainer. Dawn says. Then I have to challenge her before someone else does. Ash says, and goes into the Pokémon Center to swap around the Pokémon that are currently in his party for his battle with Leaf. Once he is finished, Ash comes out of the Pokémon, having changed the Pokémon, besides Pikachu, Charizard and Zorua, in his party. You ready? Bianca asks, and Ash nods. The group then heads over to the gym entrance where the referee opens the door. Whoa, you actually kept on your promise of coming back. The referee says, having not expected Ash to come back for his rematch. He didn't mean it in a rude way, by the way. Is Leaf in there? Ash asks the referee, walking into the gym with the group. Yes, she's waiting patiently for her 100th challenger. She's not expecting you to come back. The referee explains, and they reach the door into the battlefield where Leaf is, and he opens it up. Leaf, the challenger from yesterday, is here. The referee says. Yeah, which one? Leaf asks, seemingly uninterested, looking at her nails. The second one. The referee answers, and Leaf's eyes widen, interested by this, and Ash enters the battlefield while his friends sit on the benches. So, you actually worked up the nerve and came here, Leaf says. Like I'm backing down from beating you. Ash says, determined to beat the arrogant gym leader, and Leaf laughs from Ash's comeback. Yeah, right. Like that's gonna happen, Leaf says, and pulls out a Pokeball. You know what? I think this should be a 5-on-5 battle, just to see how bad some your other Pokemon must be, and I can finally have my 100th victory. Leaf says and laughs, while Bianca, sitting on the bench in the gym, groans, getting angrier at Leaf's arrogance. I am so close to strangling her right now, Bianca says to herself in her thoughts. The battle between gym leader Leaf and the challenger Ash is about to begin. It is a 4-on-4 battle, and in addition, only the challenger can. Will you shut it? He probably already knows all this, Leaf says, rudely interrupting the referee, and he sighs from what Leaf just said to him and sits down. Man, she can be a bitch. Ash then pulls out a Pokeball and holds it up in the air. Gabite, I choose you, Ash says, and throws the Pokeball into the air, and the cave Pokemon is unleashed from his Pokeball. Gabite, he exclaims, and Bianca pulls out Ash's Pokemon to see the data on this Pokemon. Gabite, the cave Pokemon and the evolved form of Gibble. There is a long-held belief that medicine made from its scales will heal even incurable illnesses. Leaf then smiles. I've got just the Pokemon to handle that. Bully, I choose you, Leaf says, and throws a Pokeball in the air, and the Pokemon unleashed from it is a Granbull, which Leaf has given the nickname Bully. It's a Granbull, Max says. It sure looks mean, Dawn says, and Bianca pulls out Ash's Pokédex to check out the data on the fairy Pokemon. Why is it called the fairy Pokemon? It looks nothing like a fairy. Granbull, the fairy Pokemon. Granbull has a particularly well-developed lower jaw. The enormous fangs it has are heavy, causing the Pokemon to tip its head back for balance. Unless it is startled, it will not try to bite indiscriminately. Gabite, use Rock Smash, Ash says, and one of Gabite's claws turns red-orange and runs over to strike Bully with it. Dodge it and use Ice Fang, Leaf says, and Bully jumps out of the way and bits down on Gabite's neck, and white mist starts to seep out of its mouth, and ice starts to form from his mouth and begins to expand around Gabite's body. Ah! Gabite, use Flamethrower. Quick, Ash says, and the cave Pokemon hits Bully with a beam of fire and pushes him off and melts the ice on him, and Gabite jumps onto the ground but shudders a bit since his HP level was reduced a bit by Bully's Ice Fang attack. Gabite, you okay? Ash asks the cave Pokemon, and he nods, still having enough strength in his body to fight. Bully, use Bite, Leaf says, and the fairy Pokemon at his trainer's command runs over to Gabite and goes to bite down on the cave Pokemon, but Gabite dodges Bully's advance. Gabite, use Rock Smash, Ash says, and Gabite's claw turns red-orange and strikes the fairy Pokemon, which reduces Bully's health level severely due to him being a normal-type Pokemon. Ah! Bully, Leaf says. Alright, Gabite, finish this up with Draco Meteor, Ash says, and Gabite's body glows orange, and an orange sphere of light appears inside its chest, and then the glow fades and a sphere of orange energy appears in front of Gabite's mouth, and he fires the ball into the air and it explodes, releasing many orbs which rain down upon Bully and causes small explosions on the fair Pokemon. Bully, are you okay? Leaf asks, concerned for her Pokemon's health, and the smoke clears around Bully, showing him to have fainted from the Draco Meteor, and the referee looks at this shocked. Granbull is unable to battle. The winner is Gabite, the referee proclaims. But that kid has a long to winning this battle, the referee says in his thoughts. Leaf, a bit annoyed, recalls Bully back to his Pokeball and kisses it, then puts it away and looks straight at Ash. Look. That was total luck that you beat my Bully. It won't happen again, Leaf says, and pulls out another Pokeball. What Pokemon do you guys think Leaf is gonna next? Dawn asks. I don't know, but whoever it is, it'll probably be as strong as her other Pokemon, Max says. Jiggly, I choose you. Leaf says and throws the Pokeball in the air, and the Pokemon unleashed from it is Leaf's Jigglypuff, who has the nickname Jiggly, who twirls around upon being unleashed. Jigglypuff. She exclaims upon being unleashed. Bianca then pulls out Ash's Pokédex to check the data on the balloon Pokemon. Jigglypuff, the balloon Pokemon. When this Pokemon sings, nothing can avoid falling asleep hearing a Jigglypuff song. The sound waves of its singing voice can match the brain waves of someone in a deep sleep. Gabite use Dragon Pulse. Ash says, and Gabite opens up his mouth and a turquoise sphere of energy appears in front of it and then fires the sphere right at Jiggly. Jiggly use Protect. Leaf says, and a bluish-green force field appears around Jiggly's body, protecting it from Gabite's Dragon Pulse attack. What? Ash asks. Pikachu asks, shocked by this. Now use Attract. Leaf says, and Jiggly opens up her arms and releases multiple yellow hearts from her body, which all hit Gabite, and upon contact Gabite's eyes are replaced with pink hearts. Gabite says, infatuated by Jiggly because of Attract. Now that he's too busy goggling over you, Jiggly, use Double Slap. Leaf says, and both of Jiggly's hands glow white and she begins to repeatedly slap Gabite with them. Now use Ice Beam. Leaf says, and Jiggly fires a beam of light blue energy, which severely reduces Gabite's HP level due to it being an ice-type move, and Gabite falls to the ground fainted. Gabite is unable to battle the winner as Jigglypuff. The referee proclaims. It looks like your Gabite just went too gaga over my Jiggly. That was his first mistake. Leaf says and laughs at Ash, as does Jiggly. Gabite return. Ash says and recalls the fainted cave Pokemon back to his Pokeball. You might as well just give up right now. If the rest of your Pokemon are like Gabite, then it's no duh you're gonna lose. Leaf says, how the hell did she become gym leader, by the way? Arrogantly, already believing she is going to win this battle. Ash then pulls out another Pokeball. Alright, Zorua, I choose you. Ash says and throws the Pokemon in the air, and the tricky fox Pokemon is unleashed from its Pokeball. Zorua. Zorua says upon being unleashed from its Pokeball. Leaf is surprised by Zorua having never seen that kind of Pokemon before, but then smirks. Oh please, like that Pokemon is gonna beat me. In fact, the only thing I see strong about it is that it's cute. But to be frank, not that cute. Leaf says rudely, wrong. Zorua is considered to be very adorable. You haven't seen anything yet. Ash says, and Zorua activates its illusion ability and turns into a Jigglypuff who is identical to Jiggly. What did it just do? Leaf asks, not familiar with Zorua's special ability. Zorua use Night Daze. Ash says, and Zorua's eyes, in Jigglypuff form, glow light blue, and it raises both of its arms into the air and its body becomes surrounded in a crimson aura, and then Zorua, in Jigglypuff form, brings both of its hands down to the ground and a pink and crimson force field of energy appears around Zorua's body, which rams into Jiggly, sending her flying across the battlefield. Jiggly lands on the ground and, while a bit weakened by Night Daze, manages to pick herself up and gives Zorua in its Jigglypuff illusion form an intimidating stare, as does Leaf. Listen up. It doesn't matter what little magic tricks that Zorua or whatever it's called won't help you beat us. Leaf says. Jigglypuff. Jiggly says, agreeing with her trainer. Zorua then sheds its illusion disguise and gives a smirk of mischief. Jiggly use Attract. Leaf says, and Jiggly fires several hearts right at Zorua, which hit it and does nothing at all, and Zorua just smiles at this. Attract didn't work on Zorua. Dawn says. Yeah, but Gabite is a boy, which makes Jigglypuff a girl. Max says. Then that means Zorua is a girl. Bianca says, putting all the pieces together. Zorua use Shadow Ball. Ash says, and Zorua opens up her mouth and forms a sphere of black and purple energy with black static around and front of it and then fires it at Jiggly. Dodge it. Leaf says, and the balloon Pokemon dodges the ghost-type attack fired by Zorua. Now Jiggly use Tri-Attack. Leaf says, and a 3-point pyramid forms around Jiggly's body and an orb of light forms at the tip of the pyramid and Jiggly then fires a beam from the orb at Zorua, which sends the tricky fox Pokemon flying. Zorua then activates her illusion ability and changes into a Togekiss, the only flying Pokemon she's probably seen by now, and safely floats in the air, and Leaf becomes a bit irritated by this and sneers, "Jiggly, use Ice Beam." Leaf says, and Jiggly fires an Ice Beam attack in the air trying to hit Zorua, in Togekiss form, with it. Zorua use Shadow Ball. Ash says, and Zorua, in Togekiss form, opens up her mouth and fires a sphere of black and purple energy right at Jiggly, which sends the balloon Pokemon flying across the battlefield and smacks right down onto the ground and faints. Jigglypuff is unable to battle the winner as Zorua. The referee says. Leaf then recalls Jiggly back to her Pokeball and kisses it. "You did your best, Jiggly, get some rest," Leaf says, and puts Jiggly's Pokeball away. So now Ash has 4 Pokemon left and Leaf only has 3. Dawn says, "Come on, Ash. You can beat her." Bianca says, wanting to give Ash some encouragement. "I don't think so. Alright, Zam. Let's win this fight." Leaf says and throws the Pokeball in the air, and the Pokemon unleashed from it is an Alakazam, which has the nickname Leaf has given it, Zam. Alakazam. It proclaims upon being unleashed, and Bianca pulls out Ash's Pokédex to check the data on the Psy Pokemon. Alakazam, the Psy Pokemon. Alakazam's brain continually grows, infinitely multiplying brain cells. This amazing brain gives this Pokemon an astoundingly high IQ of 5,000. It has a thorough memory of everything that has occurred in the world. That's a big mistake, Leaf. Zorua is a dark-type Pokemon. Ash says, pointing out that Zam is at a type disadvantage since it is a Psychic-type Pokemon while Zorua is a Dark-type. Yeah, I know that, but that doesn't mean you'll win. Leaf says, "She's lying, just so you know." Zorua use Dark Pulse. Ash says, and Zorua opens up her mouth and an orb of black and dark blue circles appears in front of it and then fires a beam of black and dark blue circles from the orb, which immediately hits Zam. Zorua caught it by surprise, sending the Psy Pokemon crashing into the wall on Leaf's side of the battlefield. "Zam, are you okay?" Leaf asks, going over to where the Psy Pokemon is. "Alakazam." Zam says, and with some assistance from Leaf gets back on its feet and runs back over to where it was on the battlefield ready to continue its battle with Ash and Zorua. "Don't think you're gonna win all because you have a type advantage," Leaf says to Ash and holds out her hand. Zam use Thunder Punch. Leaf says, and Zam's fist becomes surrounded by electrical sparks and runs over to punch Zorua, but the tricky fox Pokemon jumps into the air dodging the attack. Zorua use Dark Pulse. Again. Ash says, and Zorua opens up her mouth and an orb of black and dark blue circles appears in front of it and then fires a beam of black and dark blue circles from the orb, which hits Zam right in the head, blasting him right to the ground. The dust clears around Zam and it shows that the Psy Pokemon has fainted with swirls in its eyes. Alakazam is unable to battle. The winner is Zorua. The referee proclaims, "It's starting to look like Leaf is going to lose." "Wonderful," the referee says in his thoughts, actually hoping Ash wins this battle. Who could blame him? Leaf then recalls Zam back to its Pokeball. "Hey guys, look at Leaf, she looks like she's looks mad." Dawn says, looking at Leaf's irritated expression. "She's losing, of course she's mad." Bianca says with a smile on her face, and Leaf looks at them, giving them an angry and intimidating stare. "Hey, remember our battle?" Ash asks. Pikachu. Pikachu says, and this brings Leaf's attention back to them. "Don't think all because you have 2 more Pokemon than me, means you'll win." Leaf says and pulls out another Pokeball. "Neato, we have a fight to win." Leaf says and throws a Pokeball in the air, and the Pokémon unleashed is her Nidoqueen, which Leaf has given the nickname, Nido. Nidoqueen. Nido exclaims upon being unleashed from her Pokeball. Alright, Zorua, use Dark Pulse. Ash says and Zorua fires a beam of black and dark blue circles at Nido. Dodge it. Leaf says and Nido dodges the dark type move, and Ash, Pikachu and Zorua gasp from this. Now use Brick Break. Leaf says and Nido runs over to Zorua and her arm glows white and she strikes the tricky fox Pokemon with it, which severely cuts her HP levels due to it being a fighting type move. Now use Rock Smash. Leaf says and Nido's arm glows white and she smashes Zorua with it, sending her flying, and she hits the ground and faints with swirls in her eyes. Zorua is unable to battle. The winner is Nidoqueen. The referee proclaims, "Looks like you're down to just 3 Pokemon left. I can't wait to see how bad they fight." Leaf says and Ash gets a bit angry by what Leaf just said to him and pulls out a Pokeball. "Tauros, I choose you." Ash says and throws a Pokeball in the air, and the Pokemon unleashed is Tauros. This matchup is familiar, and Bianca pulls out her Pokédex, curious about this one. Tauros, the wild bull Pokemon. This Pokemon is not satisfied unless it is rampaging at all times. If there is no opponent for Tauros to battle, it will charge at thick trees and knock them down to calm itself. Nido use Brick Break. Leaf says and Nido runs towards it with her arm glowing. Dodge it. Ash says and Tauros runs out of the way before Nido can get him. Now use Double Team. Ash says and Tauros' body glows white and splits into multiple copies of him. Nido. Nidoqueen. Nido asks, not being able to tell which one is the real Tauros. Now use Fisher. Ash says and Tauros rattles the battlefield with his hooves, and then uses one of his hooves to slice open the ground with a white energy beam, and Nido falls right into it, and Leaf looks down to see if Nido is okay, only to see Nido fainted. It's a one-hit KO. Nidoqueen is unable to battle. The winner is Tauros. The referee proclaims, "Yes. Looks like that stuck-up bitch won't be winning any battles today." Bianca says in her thoughts with a smile on her face, who knew she used such language. Leaf then recalls Nido back to her Pokeball and pulls out a Pokeball and smiles at it. "I know you can't be beat," Leaf says and holds the Pokeball up in the air. "Blasty, come out and teach these guys a lesson." Leaf says and she throws the Pokeball in the air, and the Pokemon unleashed from it is Leaf's Blastoise, which she has given the nickname of Blasty, too. Blastoise. He exclaims upon being unleashed, and Bianca pulls out Ash's Pokédex to see the data on the shellfish Pokemon. Blastoise, the shellfish Pokemon. Blastoise has waterspouts that protrude from its shell. The waterspouts are very accurate. They can shoot bullets of water with enough accuracy to strike empty cans from a distance of over 160 feet. Blasty here is my strongest Pokemon, and no challenger has beaten it, so don't get your hopes up about winning this. Leaf says, "You shouldn't either." Tauros use Horn Attack. Ash says and Tauros' horns glow white and charges at Blasty at high speed. Blasty, dodge it. Leaf says and Blasty dodges the Horn Attack and lands right behind Tauros. Now use Focus Blast. Leaf says and Blasty puts his hands together and forms a light blue orb of energy, and then raises his hands above his head, and the orb grows as big as his own body, and then throws the orb right at Tauros, and the wild bull Pokemon is knocked into the wall and falls to the ground fainted. It's a fighting type move, and Blastoise is a pretty high-leveled Pokemon. Tauros is unable to battle. The winner is Blastoise. The referee proclaims. Ash then recalls Tauros back to his Pokeball and puts it away and pulls out another. "I've only got 2 Pokemon left I'm able to use. Let's hope one of them can beat Leaf." Ash says to himself in his thoughts, looking at the Pokeball. "Alright, Sceptile, I choose you." Ash says and throws the Pokeball in the air, and the forest Pokemon is unleashed from it. Sceptile. The forest Pokemon exclaims after being unleashed, and Bianca pulls out Ash's Pokédex. Sceptile, the forest Pokemon. It agilely leaps about the jungle and uses the sharp leaves on its arms to strike its prey. Oh, so all because it's a grass type means it will win? I don't think so. Leaf says she's trying to hide her fear of losing this battle with him by talking like that. Sceptile use Leaf Blade. Ash says, and the 4 leaves on Sceptile's wrists glow light green and form into 2, and Sceptile then goes to slice Blasty with it. Blasty use Ice Beam. Leaf says, and Blasty hits Sceptile with multiple light blue beams of energy which freezes Sceptile up, and the frozen forest Pokémon falls to the ground and the ice shatters around it and Sceptile faints. I didn't even give him a chance. Sceptile is unable to battle. The winner is Blastoise. The referee proclaims. Looks like you've got just one Pokémon left. You could always use that Pikachu on your shoulder, but I doubt it can beat my Blasty. Leaf says, and Ash pulls out the Pokeball containing his last usable Pokémon, more determined than ever to win this battle against Leaf. I know it's been a long time, old buddy, but I need your help, so Charizard, I choose you. Ash says and throws the Pokeball in the air, and in an instant Charizard is unleashed from the Pokeball and the flame Pokémon lets out a mighty roar. Leaf then breaks out into laughter, as does Blasty. If you actually believe that a fire-type Pokémon can beat a water-type one, then you're even dumber than I thought. Leaf says. We'll see about that. Charizard use Dragon Breath. Ash says, and Charizard fires a transparent beam of energy from its mouth at Blasty. Blasty use Protect. Leaf says, and at his trainer's commands a light blue-green veil of energy forms around Blasty, which protects it from Charizard's Dragon Breath attack. Now use Hydro Cannon. Leaf says, and Blasty fires 2 powerful orbs of water from its cannons. Quick, Charizard, dodge it. Ash says, and Charizard flies out of the way of the Hydro Cannon and nearly gets hit while flying. Blasty use Brine. Leaf says, and Blasty fires a blast of powerful stream of water, which is heading straight for Charizard in the air. Charizard dodge it and use Dragon Rage. Ash says, and Charizard opens its mouth and forms a light blue orb of energy inside of its mouth and then fires a beam of energy from the orb at Blasty, which sends the shellfish Pokémon crashing into the wall but doesn't make him faint and pulls himself out. Blasty use Water Pulse. Leaf says, and Blasty opens up his mouth and a light blue orb of energy and launches the orb at Charizard in the air. Quick, dodge it. Ash says, and Charizard does just this, but the Water Pulse hits him and the flame Pokémon falls to the ground. Charizard, are you okay? Ash asks, and Charizard struggles to get up but does it nevertheless. Great, alright, use Smokescreen. Ash says, and Charizard unleashes a thick black smoke from its mouth around Blasty and Leaf. Since we does Charizard know that move? May asks, not remembering the flame Pokémon ever using that move. Well, you've only seen him use Charizard like twice, so you don't know a lot of his moves. Charizard must have learned it in Cherisific Valley. Max theorizes, which is true by the way. Leaf coughs while the smokescreen fog. Blasty, can you see anything? Leaf asks, and Blasty is shown to able to see anything through the thick black fog, and Charizard flies in towards him while he is confused. Now. Charizard use Thunder Punch. Ash says, and Charizard's fist becomes surrounded by yellow electricity and Charizard punches Blasty right in the stomach, severely reducing the shellfish Pokemon's HP due to Thunder Punch being an electric type move. Now use Steel Wing. Ash says, and both of Charizard's wings glow white and strikes Blasty with both of them. Now use Dragon Breath. Ash says, and Charizard fires a transparent beam of energy with white rings around it from its mouth right into Blasty. I'm having blast this one alright. Now finish it up with another Thunder Punch. Ash says, and Charizard's hand once again becomes surrounded by yellow electricity and punches Blasty once again right in the stomach, sending him flying right and slamming right into the wall on Leaf's side of the battlefield, and fog clears around them and Blasty falls to the ground fainted. The referee sees this and his eyes widen in surprise. Blastoise is unable to battle. The winner is Charizard. The victory goes to Ash. The referee proclaims, applause should be heard right now. Ash did it. Max says. Charizard then lets out a big roar in victory, feeling proud of itself. Leaf then recalls the fainted Blasty and gives Ash an angry and irritated look. Just a sec, Leaf says, and goes somewhere to get something. Bianca then runs down from her seat to where Ash is and hugs him. You beat her. Did you see the look on her face? Bianca asks, finding much joy in Leaf's defeat, and suddenly a sharp dark green leaf-shaped badge is thrown at Ash's head, which catches in his hand. There, it's the miracle badge. It's yours now, get out. Leaf says in a rude tone of voice and walks away, obviously not happy at all with her first loss as a gym leader and her broken record. Well, someone is a sore loser, Bianca says out loud, and Leaf turns around and stares at her but then loses interest and just walks off. The group then goes back to the Pokémon Center and Nurse Joy sees Ash approach the counter. I told you I'm not treating your Pokémon. Nurse Joy says, thinking Ash has been defeated by Leaf, and Ash then pulls out the miracle badge and shows it to Nurse Joy, who is surprised by that. I'll get to treating your Pokémon right away, Nurse Joy says, and takes Ash's Pokeballs to treat the Pokémon inside. Soon after treating Ash's Pokémon, Nurse Joy gives Bianca her own Pokédex to collect data about the Pokémon she might encounter and about 6 Pokeballs so that she can start capturing her own Pokémon. Thank you, Nurse Joy, Bianca says. You're welcome, Nurse Joy says, and walks off. Now I'll be able to catch my own Pokémon. This is so exciting, Bianca says. I know, trust me, it will be a lot of fun, Ash says. With Ash's 4th Kanto region gym badge obtained, our hero simply needs 4 more to compete in the Indigo Platea, and now Bianca will be able to capture her own Pokémon. What will happen next? Stay tuned and find out next time. Outside of Commerce City, 2 Butterfree fly together. One is a normal colored one with a yellow scarf around guess who. And the other one has an unusual color, and it's not a shiny Butterfree but rather a pink Butterfree, and unknown to them, Hunter J is watching them from inside her cloaked airship. Sir, we've spotted 2 Butterfree in the air, one of henchmen says. And why are you telling me this? Jay asks. Well, one of them isn't the color of a normal Butterfree, the henchman says. What? A shiny Butterfree? Jay asks. No, not a shiny one. A pink one, the henchman says, showing Jay the live feed of the pink and normal colored Butterfree flying together, and Jay smiles at this. I'm sure someone will pay a lot for a Butterfree of that color, Jay says, planning to make the pink Butterfree her next target. Flashback Battle Arena 5 years ago. Anthony has been training with Greta at the Battle Arena for over 6 months now and has pretty much mastered the art of karate, but since he began training, Anthony has developed serious anger issues stemming from his father's death 15 months ago, and has attacked and injured several students who have said something to him that in any way, little or big, offends him, which has forced Greta to have to confront Anthony on this issue. Anthony, we need to talk, Greta says, approaching Anthony, who is observing a stack of wood. What is it now? Anthony asks in an uninterested tone of voice, and then breaks all the wood in half with no difficulty or signs of pain. He feels it, he just doesn't show it. What do you think? You broke Nathan's arm, Greta says. He was being arrogant. He said I was too young to know all this, Anthony says, giving his excuse for doing what he did. That in absolutely no way excuses what you did, Anthony. This is the 6th time you've done this. Greta says, whoa, he was rough when he was 13. What's your point exactly, Greta? Anthony asks. My point? Anthony, you have a serious anger problem that you need to under control, Greta says with a serious and slightly aggravated tone of voice. And how do you suggest I do that? Anthony asks. I don't know. But you can't stay here if you're going to keep acting like this, Greta says. What are you saying? Anthony asks, this getting his attention and interest. I'm saying, Anthony, because of your behavior I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Greta says. So I'm expelled, is that it? Anthony asks. I'm afraid yes, Anthony. Greta says with some guilt in her voice, not really wanting to say this. Fine. Anthony says. I'll grab my things and be gone by sundown. Anthony says, feeling he has learned enough from the battle arena, and walks off to gather his things and leave. End flashback. Commerce City. Current time. In the airs outside of Commerce City, the beautiful morning sun rises, and the normal colored Butterfree with the yellow scarf and the pink one fly peacefully through the air without a single care in the world, when suddenly Hunter J's airship decloaks right in front of them. That could ruin anybody's day. The two then take notice of this and are startled by this, and suddenly dozens of Golbat and Crobat pour out of the airship and surround the two butterfly Pokémon. Free. The pink Butterfree says to the normal colored one, obviously as scared as the normal colored one is. The Golbats and Crobats all then use a supersonic to try and confuse them, but the normal colored Butterfree uses Protect and shields himself and the pink Butterfree from the normal type attack. Jay is watching all of this from inside of the airship. We need to capture that Butterfree before it escapes, Jay says, and gets up from her command chair. Where are you going, sir? One of Jay's henchmen asks. I'm going capture that Butterfree myself, Jay says, and heads out of the command deck. The Golbat and Crobat, on Hunter J's orders, return to the airship, and normal colored Butterfree stops using Protect, feeling safe now. That wasn't a good idea, Butterfree, and Hunter J, who is riding her Salamence, appears right in front of them. Stay still and there won't have to be any trouble, Jay says, and prepares her arm cannon to fire at the pink Butterfree, but the normal colored Butterfree uses a whirlwind attack on Jay and her Salamence, which blows them away and they are sent flying through the air, but they manage to regain altitude. You pesky little insect. I'll take care of you. Salamence use Hyper Beam, Jay says, and Salamence opens up its mouth and forms a white orb of energy with a pale pink center in front of it, and then fires a pale pink beam of energy with a bright white energy around it, which hits the normal colored Butterfree, separating it from the pink one. Hunter J then aims her cannon at the pink Butterfree and fires, which turns it into stone and is placed inside of a case, and it flies right into her hands, and she smiles, and the normal colored Butterfree, injured from Salamence's Hyper Beam, simply drifts through the wind down into the city, while Hunter J, Salamence and the pink Butterfree return to the ship. After defeating the arrogant Commerce City gym leader Leaf and earning his 4th badge, Ash is about to encounter a Pokémon who he has not seen in a long time. Ash is currently peacefully eating his breakfast, which is a bowl of cereal, in the lounge of the Pokémon Center with Bianca. She has her own bowl, by the way. It's like they say, Ash, victory is sweetest when you've known defeat. Bianca says, well said, Malcolm S. Forbes. Well said, referencing Ash's victory in his rematch battle against the arrogant gym leader Leaf yesterday and his defeat the day before that. Yeah, that's for sure, Ash says, agreeing with her on that subject. Hey. You. There you are. A familiar voice calls out, and Ash and Bianca look across the lounge to see the person who said that is none other than Burgundy. Burgundy. Ash asks, shocked. Pika Pie. Pikachu asks, also shocked. Burgundy then runs over to where Ash, Pikachu and Bianca are and gets right up into Ash's face. So you actually thought you could escape me, didn't you? Burgundy asks. I didn't think you'd follow me all the way here to Kanto. Ash says, a bit creeped out by Burgundy, who followed him from the faraway Unova region to the Kanto region. Well, you were wrong. I'll follow you anywhere to get revenge. Burgundy says. Wait, who are you exactly? Bianca asks, having not met Burgundy, which was a good thing, and Burgundy turns her head in Bianca's direction and runs over to her and gets in her face. You shouldn't have said anything, Bianca. This doesn't concern you in the slightest. So just back off. Burgundy says, yelling right in Bianca's face. My name is Bianca, by the way. Bianca says, a bit nervously. Well, for your information, my name is Burgundy. Burgundy says, introducing herself to Bianca right after yelling at her. At least she's trying to be a little classy. As for you, I've been following you for weeks now, ever since you defeated me and I swore revenge against you. I was even on the same plane as you when you came back here for Kanto. Burgundy explains. Okay. That's pretty creepy. Ash says, which is an understatement, Ash, because that is extremely creepy. Why do you even want revenge against Ash anyway? Bianca asks. I want revenge because he didn't just defeat, but before that he had the nerve to insult my skills as a Pokemon Kanaisu's. Burgundy explains. What did he say? Bianca asks. I'll tell you what he said. Burgundy says. Burgundy fantasy. Burgundy is holding on to her fainted Samurott while in a spotlight in a darkness with a giant Ash, Pikachu and Shiny Purloin who are surrounded by a dark aura watching over them. Your Pokemon are the weakest weaklings I have ever seen, and the only thing that's weaker is your skills as a Pokemon Kanaisu's. You will never become an S-class Kanaisu's. Now go run off and come back so I can beat you right down into the ground again. MWAHAHAHA. Ash says, laughing manically, as does Pikachu. End fantasy. I didn't say it like that. Ash says. Well, it was close enough. Burgundy says. Man, she can really exaggerate things. You sound like you're exaggerating everything Ash said to you, Bianca says, and Bianca frowns and looks straight into Bianca's eyes. Alright, let me repeat what I just told you a moment ago. This isn't any of your business, so back off. Burgundy says to Bianca aggressively, and Bianca places her hand on Burgundy's face and then pushes her out of her face, and Burgundy lands right on the couch. Burgundy then looks at Bianca and scowls at her. Xian. How dare you push me? Burgundy asks. To find out what she said in French, go on Google Translate and find out Bianca with obvious rage in both her eyes and voice. Suddenly someone puts a hand on Burgundy's shoulder and she shudders at this. Excuse miss, but I would appreciate it if you didn't harass my friends. The person behind Burgundy says, and Burgundy screams out of surprise, and she turns to see the person behind her is Ash's new friend Anthony Jenny. Anthony. Ash asks. Look sir, this doesn't really concern you. Burgundy says. At least she's trying to be polite miss. I couldn't agree more with you. Anthony says and puts his hands on her shoulders and moves Burgundy to the exit. So I believe it would be in everyone's best interests for you to leave, Anthony says and pushes her through and the door closes. Whoa. That's actually a great way to deal with her. Ash says, pretty impressed by the way Anthony dealt with Burgundy. So from what I heard, she wants revenge against her for insulting her skills as a Pokemon Kanaisu's. Anthony says, recounting what he had heard while eavesdropping on the Ash, Bianca and Burgundy. Yeah, that about sums it up. Ash says. Pika Pie, Pikachu says. Meanwhile, somewhere else in Commerce City, but not too far from the Pokemon Center, May, Dawn and Max are walking through the streets looking around the city. So May, where are we going anyway? Dawn asks May since the coordinator from Hoenn hasn't told them where they're going in Commerce City. I thought since we're here in Commerce, we could visit a friend of mine here, May explains. Butterfree, a weak voice says, and the three turn their heads to see the normal-colored Butterfree with the yellow scarf laying on the ground injured after its fight with Hunter J and her Salamence. Hey look, it's a Butterfree. Dawn says. It looks like it's hurt. May says, whoa. What gave it away, May? We better get it to the Pokemon Center quick, Max says, and they go over and pick the injured Butterfree off the ground and turn around and begin running back to the Pokemon Center. While I was in Unova, I had seen a few Kanaisu's shops, but I never had my Pokemon evaluated by one, Anthony says, having a conversation with Ash and Bianca in the Pokemon Center lounge. You should never ask Burgundy to evaluate your Pokemon, she won't get a single thing right, Ash says. I'll keep that in mind, Anthony says. Outside the Pokemon Center, Burgundy is sitting on a bench. Who does that guy think he is, pushing me out the door? If I could I would, but before Burgundy could finish her sentence she looks to see May, Max and Dawn running for the Pokemon Center with the injured Butterfree in Dawn's arms and watches them run into the Pokemon Center. Ash. Max says. What is it guys? Ash asks. Pikachu. Pikachu asks, we found a Butterfree on the ground and it's hurt. Dawn says, and Bianca pulls out her Pokédex to check the data on this Pokémon. Butterfree, the butterfly Pokémon. Butterfree has a superior ability to search for delicious honey from flowers. It can even search out, extract, and carry honey from flowers that are blooming over 6 miles from its nest. Ash comes over and looks at the injured Butterfree and notices the yellow scarf on its neck and gasps, as does Pikachu, shocked by this. Ash, what's wrong? Bianca asks. This Butterfree, it's my Butterfree. Ash says, your Butterfree. May asks, since she hasn't heard Ash mention having a Butterfree at all. We need to get this Butterfree medical treatment now. Anthony says, looking at how injured the butterfly Pokémon is. Right. Ash says, agreeing with him. The group, including Anthony, hand Ash's injured Butterfree to the nurse Joy, who along with her Chansey begin to treat the butterfly Pokémon's injuries and nurse it back to health. So Ash, you said this Butterfree is yours, but why wasn't it with you? Anthony asks, finding that odd. Well, you see, I released Butterfree over 6 years ago, Ash says. Really, why? Dawn asks. Well, you see, Butterfree was the first Pokémon I captured in the wild way back when I first started out as a Pokémon trainer when he was a Caterpie, Ash explains. Flashback, Viridian Forest 6 years ago. A flashback shows a 10-year-old Ash Ketchum in Viridian Forest staring down with a wild Caterpie, but capturing him was pretty easy, to be honest. Ash explains and shows 10-year-old Ash throwing an empty Pokeball at the wild Caterpie, which absorbs it and falls on the ground and wobbles several times, then halts, confirming its capture. Then he evolved into a Metapod the same day and then into a Butterfree not so long after. Ash explains, showing more flashbacks of Caterpie covering himself in a string shot attack and evolving into a Metapod and then cracking open and evolving into a Butterfree. So why did you release it? Anthony asks. It was a season where Butterfree go to find a mate and mine did a pink Butterfree. Ash explains, showing a flashback of his Butterfree meeting the pink one and the two flying off with Ash waving goodbye. End flashback, Commerce City, current time. A pink Butterfree. That sounds unusual. Anthony says. Wait, Ash, if this is your Butterfree, then where's the pink one? Dawn asks. Yeah, and what happened to this one? Max asks, referring to the normal-colored Butterfree's injuries sustained in the air. I don't know. That's what worries me the most. Ash says, feeling just as worried for his Butterfree's mate as he is of his Butterfree, and he looks at his Butterfree who is getting medical treatment, and suddenly Ash's eyes glow blue and blue aura surrounds his Butterfree and he suddenly sees Butterfree's memories. Memory flash. The memory of Hunter J and her Salamence attacking Ash's Butterfree and his mate, including Butterfree being hit by Salamence's Hyper Beam attack and losing altitude, while the pink Butterfree is turned to stone by J's cannon and placed in a case. End memory. Pokémon Hunter J. Ash says. What about her? Dawn asks. She was the one who attacked Butterfree, and she has his mate. Ash says, recounting what he saw in Butterfree's memories to his friends. Who's Hunter J? In fact, what's a Pokémon hunter? Bianca asks. A Pokémon hunter is someone who captures wild and sometimes captured Pokémon and sells them on the black market. Anthony explains. How do you know all that? May asks. I'm from a police family. I know things like that. Anthony says. That sounds awful. Bianca says, it is Bianca, it is. Jay is a Pokémon hunter me and Dawn ran into a couple times in the Sinnoh region. She once tried to steal Pikachu and she's one of the worst people I've ever met. Ash explains, which is true, she is one of the ruthless villains in the anime. Which means she plans to sell your Butterfree's mate, and I can assume she can make a lot from it having an unusual color. Anthony says, then we have to find her before she gets away. May says. That might be hard, her ship can turn invisible, so it's pretty hard to find. Ash says. We have to think of some way to find her soon, Ash. If what you say is true, we don't have much time. Anthony says. What should we do? Max asks, open to suggestion. Wait guys. I've got an idea. May says. What? Max asks. We know someone who might be smart enough who lives here who could track down Jay's ship. May says. Who? Dawn asks. The group along with Anthony then quickly run through Commerce City and they make their way to a large building where they knock on the door and an elderly man greets them and recognizes. Ah yes. I remember you people. The man says. We're here to see Luna. It's really important. Ash says. Right this way, he says. On the rooftop of the building, a girl perhaps 11 years old who is wearing a pink dress and has red hair with 2 long ponytails is currently working on something on her laptop with a scissor probably belonging to her is standing in the corner. Miss Luna, you have visitors, the man says, revealing the girl's name to be Luna. The group then walks onto the rooftop after the man does and Luna sees May, smiles and runs over and hugs her. Finally May. You're here to visit me. Luna says since she has been waiting 3 or 4 years for May to visit her. Took you long enough, May. Yeah Luna, I am. May says. Luna, the reason we're here is that we really need your help. Ash says. I'm all ears. Luna says. A Butterfree I know was captured by a Pokemon hunter near here named Jay. Ash explains. Pardon me sir, but did you say the one who captured this Butterfree was named Jay? The butler asks. Yeah, have you heard about her? Ash says. Indeed I have. He says. I heard a Pokemon hunter is someone who steals other people's Pokemon for money. Luna says. Correct you are my dear, and Hunter Jay is one of the most ruthless. Her and her group of mercenary henchmen were responsible for several crimes in the Sinnoh region. They disappeared for several years but recently have re-emerged. The butler explains, giving Luna some information about Jay and her henchmen. The Butterfree she captured is a different color, a pink one. Ash says. Which is a bad thing. A Pokemon with an unusual color can go for a high price on the black market. The butler says. We need you to help us find her ship. It can turn invisible. Do you have anything that can find it? Anthony asks. All right, I'll help you. But I don't know when. Luna says. What do you mean? Dawn asks. It might take me a while to make something that can track her. Maybe a week or 3. Luna says. We don't have that much time, Luna. We need to catch her before she gets away. Ash says, not willing to let Pokemon hunter Jay escape with his Butterfree's mate. Wait guys. What if we baited Hunter Jay back into the city? Max asks, coming up with an idea. With what? Luna asks and Max points at Scizor and Ash begins to get what he's saying. Oh, I get what you're saying, Max. Ash says. What? Dawn asks. A talking Pokemon would probably be worth a ton to a Pokemon hunter. Which means, Ash says and turns to Luna. Luna, it's time for Red Lightning to come back. Ash says and Luna smiles. Alright, let's do it, Luna says. In the middle of Commerce City, cars are driving on the roads and people walking to wherever they are off to, and suddenly a loud laugh is heard and the people on the street stop and look to the top of the building to see Luna's Scizor, Red Lightning, who is now covered in a red cloak. Looks, it's Red Lightning. A person down on the ground says, Red Lightning is back. Another says, indeed, it is I, Red Lightning, Commerce City. It has been a while since the last time any of you have laid your weak eyes on me, but nevertheless I have returned, and I hear there is a Pokemon hunter known as Jay out there who enjoys capturing rare and powerful Pokemon, so if you are hearing this, Jay, come and get me, if you can. Red Lightning says, then laughs manically and jumps away. Meanwhile, inside of Hunter Jay's airship, Jay, having seen Red Lightning's challenge, maybe she has like a spy cam there or something, and smiles. Challenge accepted, Red Lightning, Jay says, and the pilots of the ship change course back to Commerce City to search and capture Red Lightning. So you use the computer to talk through the radio on your Scizor and make it appear that Red Lightning is talking. That's clever, Anthony says, impressed by Luna's deception with Red Lightning. Theatrical and deception are powerful agents to the uninitiated. Now all Red Lightning has to do is bait Hunter Jay out so we can put this tracker on her and follow her back to her ship. Luna explains and then gives Ash the tracking device she just made to track Hunter J. Yeah, but we have to hurry. She'll be here soon, Ash says, knowing how Hunter J works. Somewhere else in Commerce City, Red Lightning is jumping around building and lands in an alleyway. Red Lightning. Hunter J calls out and she appears in the alleyway riding her Salamence. I see you have heard of me and you must be Pokemon Hunter J. Red Lightning. Well, really, Luna through the radio says. Yes, I am. And you're coming with me, Jay says and points her cannon at Red Lightning and fires, but Red Lightning dodges the shot and fires a swift attack at Hunter J from its claw, which hits her Salamence but doesn't really do that much damage to its health. Salamence. Dragon Pulse. Jay says, and Salamence opens its mouth and a turquoise sphere of energy appears in front of it and then fires the sphere at Red Lightning, but he dodges the attack and suddenly Maze Blaziken appears and one of Blaziken's feet glow metallic light blue and kicks Jay's Salamence right in the face with great force. Blaziken then lands right on the ground flawlessly and stares right at Jay and her Salamence. Blaziken. It says, ready to fight them. You defiantly look like a strong Pokemon. I suppose I'll be capturing you today too. Jay says and aims her cannon right at Blaziken, but before she can fire a shot, a Shadow Ball attack is fired, Salamence catching it by surprise, which causes Jay to fall off of Salamence and onto the ground below. Jay then groans in anger and looks up to the top of the building above her to see the source of the Shadow Ball as Ash's Zorua along with Ash himself and Pikachu, and sneers at him. I didn't expect to see you here. Jay says, both surprised and angered by Ash's sudden appearance. Neither did I. Ash says, let the Butterfree that you captured go right now. Bianca says, and Jay gets up from the ground. Do you actually think I'm going to take orders from you? Salamence, get rid of them with flamethrower. Jay says, and Salamence sprays fire towards Ash, Bianca, Pikachu and Zorua, but Ash's Charizard flies in the way and launches a Dragon Breath attack which cuts through Salamence's flamethrower and hits the Dragon Pokemon, which is super effective due to it being a Dragon-type attack and causes Salamence to crash into the ground. Please. You're not even a worthy practice opponent then, and actually one. Weakling. Red Lightning says and laughs, and soon Jay's Salamence rises from the ground after recovering from Charizard's Dragon Breath attack, fires a Hyper Beam attack at Red Lightning only for Red Lightning, which explode on contact, sending Red Lightning hitting the wall. Hunter J then hops on top of her Salamence and it gains altitude, but before the two can escape, Ash, while Hunter J isn't looking, throws the tracking device Luna gave them on her back. She doesn't even feel it, as she and her Salamence fly off into the air. We did it. She's tagged, she can't get away. Ash says, and Charizard flies underneath where an Ash recalls Zorua back to her Pokeball and him. Bianca and Pikachu hop onto Charizard and fly after the Pokemon Hunter, while Blaziken and Red Lightning begin jumping buildings to get back to Luna's house. Back at Luna's house in the yard, Luna's butler, May, Max, Dawn and Anthony are monitoring Jay's tracker on Luna's computer, and soon Red Lightning and May's Blaziken return to the yard. It seems the bait worked now. All Ash has to do is find the pink Butterfree and get out of Jay's airship, Anthony says. We should have gone with him. He only has 6 Pokemon with him and Bianca doesn't have any. Dawn says, whoa, Ash didn't really think this plan all the way through, and neither did I when writing this. I'm sure Ash will be fine. That Charizard is a strong one from what I've heard, Anthony says, having confidence in Ash's abilities as a trainer. Yeah, but still. Dawn says, I'll be right back, guys, Anthony says, heading for the door. Where are you going, Anthony? May asks. I need to use the bathroom, Anthony says. Do you wish to have me show you where it is, sir? Luna's butler asks. No thank you. I'm sure I'll find it eventually, Anthony says and goes inside. Once inside, Anthony unzips his backpack and inside his the armor pieces, which the chest piece one has a Gligar-shaped symbol on. It's time, Anthony says and begins the process of placing the armor on him. You won't see it. Meanwhile, up in the air, Hunter J and her Salamence approach her airship and it turns visible and the two enter it and Charizard flies behind the ship and lands on top of it and Ash, Bianca and Pikachu hop off of him. Charizard use flamethrower to melt a way in. Ash says and Charizard does just this and melts a hole big enough for him and Bianca to go through and recalls him back to his Pokeball. Wait, Ash, they'll know we're here then. Bianca says, thinking the way Ash is doing things is reckless, which isn't too far-fetched. I don't care, Bianca. If we don't stop Jay from getting away, that Butterfree will get sold to some scumbag for money, Ash says. Pikachu. Pikachu says, agreeing with Ash, remembering his own capture by Hunter J years ago in Sinnoh, and the two jump down the hole into the airship and Bianca sighs, still thinking this is crazy, but jumps down as well anyway. In the command deck of the airship, the alarms go off. What's happening? Jay asks one of the pilots. There's been a security breach, sir, apparently on the lower decks. The pilot says and then shows a live feed of the lower decks on the big screen showing Ash, Bianca and Pikachu there. Jay sneers at this and groans in frustration. Ketchum. But how did he find me? Jay asks, standing up. Sir, there's something on your back. One of the pilots says, and Jay feels her back and pulls off the tracker and groans again. He put a tracker on me, of course. Jay says and throws the tracker to the ground. Suddenly the live feed turns to static for some reason. What just happened? Jay asks. I don't know. The cameras have all gone static for some reason, nothing but the piloting controls are working. A pilot reports. Ketchum must have something that scrambled the systems. Jay says, you are so very wrong, Hunter J. Jay then unleashes all of her Pokemon Salamence, Drapion, Ariados and a new Pokemon, which she must have captured while in the Unova region, a Scolipede. Sir, are you going after him? Pilot asks and Jay slaps him over the head. You idiot. What do you think I'm going to do? She asks and leaves the deck with her Pokemon to go after Ash. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the ship, in a dark room, an explosion is triggered on the floor, making a hole in it big enough for a human being to climb through, which causes wine to begin to suck out of the ship, but a dark figure climbs through it along with a bat-like Pokemon and the figure pushes a crate on the hole, stopping the sucking. Gligar, Gligar. The Pokemon says, guess who that Pokemon is? Everybody. Their systems are scrambled, Gligar. So it'll be much easier to locate and rescue the Butterfree. The figure says in a deep, but not sounding like he has throat cancer, voice, and the two leave the room to search for the pink Butterfree who is being held captive on the ship. Alright. If this is the same kind of ship she had 3 years ago, then the place she keeps Pokemon she catches isn't too far away. Ash says, how he remembers this even I don't know, and I'm the writer of this story, and suddenly Jay's Salamence flies right in their way and growls at them. I told you they would find out we're here. Bianca says, and soon from behind them Jay's Scolipede, Ariados, Drapion and Jay herself join the mix. I must admit I'm impressed you were smart enough to plant a tracker on me, but I'm even more impressed you knew how to scramble my systems, Jay says. Wait. What do you mean? I didn't do that. I didn't even know that happened. Ash asks, do you think I really care? I'm not going to just let you come aboard and steal something that's way too valuable to me. Hunter J asks, referring to the pink Butterfree that she kidnapped. No way. I'm not letting her another Pokeball. Ash says and pulls out 4 other Pokeballs and unleashes the Pokemon inside, which are his Zorua, Gabite, Snorlax and Glalie. Don't ask why he didn't unleash his Charizard, and Jay smiles. You really thought I wouldn't come with just my Pokemon? Jay asks, and suddenly about 10 of Hunter Jay's henchmen surround Ash, Bianca and Ash's Pokemon. This is going to be a lot tougher than I thought it would. Ash says, man, Ash really didn't think this all the way through, and apparently neither did I when I was writing this. Suddenly all of the lights in the area go off for some unknown reason. Hey, what happened to the lights? One of Hunter Jay's henchmen asks in the darkness. Ah. One of the henchmen screams and then goes silent. Who's screaming? What's happening? Another one of them asks. Does anyone have a flashlight? Another asks, and one of them turns out to have and turns it on only for the dark figure to grab him from behind and knocks him out with a single blow to the head. Sir, someone else must be in here with. Ah! One of Jay's henchmen screams, and the sound of a knockout can be heard. Somebody get the flashlight he had. Before whoever this guy is gets us. A henchman says, and one of them fumbling around in the dark manages to get the flashlight and flashes it in the way of the dark figure and shows for a brief moment he is a man wearing black-violet armor with a Gligar-like symbol on his chest, cape and a cowl, and pounces the henchman, then knocks him out and turns off the flashlight, darkening the room once again. This is not good, a henchman says, and the sounds of punching, kicking and the faint sounds of bones breaking and the lights suddenly turn back on and shows the masked figure is gone and all of the henchmen are lying on the ground, beaten down and unconscious. What just happened? Bianca asks, confused about what just happened. Nobody blames you at all, Bianca. I would be very confused too. And Hunter J looks at her beaten henchman and groans in anger. Come out, you coward. Jay says, trying to get the masked figure to come back and finish what he started with her. Glalie, use Ice Beam. Ash says, and the face Pokemon charges a light blue sphere of energy in between the horns on the top of its head and then fires light blue beams from the sphere. Salamence, use Flamethrower. Jay says, and Salamence releases a red-yellow stream of fire from its mouth, which collides with Glalie's Ice Beam, which manages to cut through the ice-type attack and hits Glalie and sends the face Pokemon crashing right into the wall, where it faints instantly. Glalie return. Ash says, and recalls Glalie back to its Pokeball and pulls out another Pokeball. I'm not wasting my time fighting you, Jay. I'm gonna spend it getting Butterfree out of here, so Charizard, I choose you. Ash says, and throws the Pokeball in the air, and in an instant Charizard is unleashed from his Pokeball and lets out a mighty roar. Ash then recalls the rest of his Pokemon, except Pikachu of course, and him. Pikachu and Bianca hop onto Charizard and fly off to search for the pink Butterfree wherever she is on the ship. Like Ash said, finding and rescuing the pink Butterfree is more important than fighting Jay. Salamence after them. Jay says, and her riding on her Salamence flies after the four and her Pokemon follow her. They just leave the beaten up and unconscious henchman on the ground. Nice. Ash, Bianca, Pikachu and Charizard then come to a door. Charizard uses a flamethrower attack on it and burns a hole through it. They could have just opened it, but it was probably locked, and they go through it and look to see the pink Butterfree which Jay captured earlier in stone form inside of a case. This is what she does to Pokemon. This is wrong. Bianca says, not liking the way Jay treats the Pokemon she captures. You and me both, I know. Let's just get Butterfree out of here. Ash says, and then goes to the switch on the case and turns it down, which unfreezes Butterfree, and the case glass retracts and Butterfree flies above Ash, Bianca, Pikachu and Charizard. Free. Free. Pink Butterfree says, happy that it is free from its confinement. Butterfree looks really happy. Ash says, you would be too if you were freed from being turned to stone too. Ash, now let's get out of here before Hunter J catches up, Bianca says. Don't move. Hunter J says, and they look behind them to see Jay on top of her Salamence with her other Pokemon who are blocking the only exit from the room. You really think I'm going to listen to you, Jay? Ash asks. No, but if you know what's good for you, you'll hand over the Butterfree and surrender, Jay says. He won't be doing that, Pokemon Hunter J, a voice says over the intercom of the ship. What the hell? Who said that? Hunter J asks. I am in complete control of this vessel now. Your entire crew has been neutralized, the voice says, and Hunter J activates her comlink. Does anyone read this? Hunter J asks. Somewhere else in the ship, several of Jay's henchmen lie on the floor, beaten and unconscious like the ones before. Whoa, he wasn't kidding. No one is answering. Jay says. You have two options, Hunter J. You and your Pokemon surrender peacefully and allow Ash, Bianca and the Pokémon you kidnapped to leave, or I will pilot the ship into the city where the police will inevitably storm it and capture you all. The voice says, telling Hunter J his demands. You can already tell that he can be a badass. Whoever you are, I'm not surrendering to someone who thinks they can just walk into my ship and take it over, Jay says, and she turns to Ash and Bianca. And I'm defiantly not letting you walk off with something that's worth something to me, Jay says. Fine. Charizard, use Dragon Breath. Ash says, and Charizard's eyes glow red and it fires a transparent beam of energy with white rings around it from its mouth, which hits Salamence, which causes it to flip over and hit the wall, and pushes Jay off of Salamence. Now Pikachu, use Thunderbolt. Ash says. Pikachu yells as he releases a powerful bolt of yellow electricity from its body at Jay's Ariados, Drapion and Scolipede, which electrocutes them and they howl in pain and fall to the ground while not fainted but with reduced HP levels. Let's go. Ash says, and him, Bianca and Pikachu along with the pink Butterfree hop onto Charizard and fly out of the room, and Hunter J picks herself up from the ground and growls in anger as the humans and Pokémon get away. On the command deck, the masked figure stands in the middle of the room with his Gligar next to him, and soon Ash, Bianca, Pikachu, Charizard and Butterfree enter it and land behind him. Who is that? Bianca asks, and the masked man turns around and looks at them. I have no idea, Ash says. Suddenly a shot is fired, but the group ducks before anyone is hit, and the shot is revealed to be from Hunter J's cannon. So you're the one who took out my crew, Hunter J says, and looks at the masked figure. I didn't expect you to be wearing something so unusual, Jay says. I bet people have worn stranger get-ups though. The masked figure does not respond to what Jay just said to him and simply holds up his wrist and fires over 6 projectiles from his gauntlet at Hunter J, which hits both Jay's shoulder and both of her cheeks, which cut them and causes her to bleed a little bit and groans in pain. You bastard. Scolipede, use Poison Tail. Jay says, and Scolipede's tails glow purple, and Scolipede goes to hit the masked man with it, but he jumps out of the way and runs over to Scolipede and jumps on it from behind and grips its neck area, and Scolipede's eyes widen in shock, then falls to the ground. Ariados, use String Shot. Jay says, and Ariados shoots multiple white strings from its mouth at the masked man, and he holds out his gauntlet, which the webs wrap around, and he grabs hold of the string and reels Ariados in, which causes the long-legged Pokémon to be thrown right in his direction and punches it right in the face. He is as bold in doing that as I was writing that. Salamence, use Flamethrower. Drapion, use Poison Sting. Jay says, and Salamence fires a spray of red-orange flames while Drapion opens its mouth and fires multiple purple darts from its mouth, and both attacks are heading right for the masked figure. What are you doing? Get out of the way. Bianca says, but the masked man jumps out of the way of both attacks and begins running towards Hunter J, who, seeing him approaching her, begins firing shots from her arm cannon to try and turn him to stone and stop him, but he dodges every shot by ducking and moving a different way. Stay back. I'm warning you. Jay says, but the masked man jumps up and tackles her off of Salamence and goes to punch her in the face, but Drapion grabs him and restrains him, and Jay smiles. Ash, we need to help that guy. Bianca says, you're right. Charizard, use Dragon Breath. Ash says, and Charizard's eyes glow red and he fires a transparent beam of energy with white rings around it from its mouth, which hits Drapion right in the face, and it releases the masked man from its grasp. I'm getting tired of fighting you, Jay says, and then looks at Ash and Bianca. I'll deal with you some other time, Jay says, and recalls the rest of her Pokémon and hops back onto Salamence and fires a Dragon Pulse attack on the wall, and she escapes through it. Ash, she's getting away. Bianca says. It doesn't matter. She doesn't have Butterfree anymore. The masked man says, feeling that it was more important that they saved the pink Butterfree than capturing Hunter J. Who are you? Ash asks, and the masked figure stares at him right in the eyes. I'm Gligarman, the masked figure says, revealing his name to be Gligarman. Yeah, I know, it would have been more epic if it was said, holding Hunter J by the collar. Gligarman. Ash asks, remembering that name. Gligarman then throws something at the windows which breaks them open, and he walks over to the broken open window with his Gligar and jumps out the window, and while falling through the air and his cape turns into a glider and glides off into the city with his Gligar. Ash, Bianca, Pikachu and Butterfree then get on to Charizard and fly out of the ship themselves, while the ship's autopilot, which was set by Gligarman, goes into the city where it will land so police can storm it and arrest the men on board. I bet this will an interesting day for the cops. The group riding Charizard then land on the roof of Luna's house where May, Max, Dawn and Luna greet them. You guys made it back. Dawn says, yeah, and we found Butterfree. Ash says, and Butterfree flies happily over the rest of the group. Wow. It really is pink. May says. Anthony then comes back on the roof. Guess where he was the whole time? Well, did I miss anything? Anthony asks. Ash came back with the Butterfree. Dawn says, what took you so long anyway? Luna asks a bit rudely. After I finished using the bathroom, I got lost in the house. I'm even surprised I managed to find my way back up here, Anthony explains, giving his excuse for taking so long. The group then goes back to the Pokemon Center where the Nurse Joy shows Ash's Butterfree has fully healed from his injuries and is happily reunited with his mate as the two fly around with each other in the air. They look so cute together. Dawn says. Ash's Butterfree and the pink Butterfree go over to Ash and Bianca and fly in front of them. Butterfree, do you want to be with me again? Ash asks and Butterfree nods in a yes fashion. Free, Butterfree says, and you want to be my Pokemon? Bianca asks and the pink Butterfree does the same as her mate does. Okay. Ash says and pulls out an empty Pokeball, as does Bianca, and the two throw them at both Butterfrees, which absorb them both and fall to the ground, wobble and blink several times and halt, and sparkles fly off them, confirming their captures. Alright. I caught a Butterfree. Bianca says, striking a pose. Whoa, she's already doing the same thing everyone else does. She catches on quick. Hey, where did Anthony go? Max asks, noticing Anthony isn't there, and neither is the Nurse Joy, and they look to see in the distance Anthony is talking with the Nurse Joy, and she giggles at whatever he just said to her. What's he doing? Luna asks, and they watch as Anthony walks out of the Pokemon Center and Ash goes over to where Nurse Joy is. What did Anthony just say to you? Ash asks. Oh, nothing really. He just said I was the cutest girl he's met so far since he's been here, and I gave him my phone number, Nurse Joy says and giggles. Okay. Ash says. I can't believe it, Ash, my first Pokemon. Bianca says. Just you wait, Bianca. There are plenty more out there to catch, Ash says. With Ash's Butterfree back into his roster of Pokemon and his mate as the first addition to Bianca's, our heroes continue their adventure. What will happen next? Stay tuned.